I don't want to sound like a glazer for Shadow of the Erdtree. In fact, I even waited to make this video just because of that, so this video can seem a little more genuine without the recency bias. But bias aside, I really love this DLC. There's no question about it, it is my favorite DLC I have ever played. Now, to be completely fair, Elden Ring was the first Souls game I beat, so I haven't tried the other Souls games DLCs, meaning that I really have no other Souls DLC to compare this one to, so I may have bias in that category, but I overall think that this DLC is a masterpiece, and I was expecting everyone to feel the same way, which is why I was pretty confused to see on the internet the amount of people that didn't really like the DLC. And usually the reviews I saw were really consistent with their critiques of this DLC. To start off, I think Shadow of the Erdtree is actually better than Elden Ring. I know that's kind of a crazy claim, but I do really mean it. And trust me, I have spent a lot more time in Elden Ring's base game than Shadow of the Erdtree, and I think Shadow of the Erdtree is just way more impressive in so many different ways. A good example of this would be the world itself. Both worlds are absolutely beautiful, but it seems that they've learned a lot of new things when making Shadow of the Erdtree because of what you can see. How high you can go in certain areas and what you can see from those areas, or how beautiful and diverse the lands are in general. I was just constantly amazed on what they could pull off, and I think it's one of the most impressive parts of this DLC. When you compare it to Elden Ring's base world, then I think a lot of people will actually say that Shadow of the Erdtree does look a lot better in a lot of different ways. And that's not at all to downgrade Elden Ring's base map, but it is to say that Shadow of the Erdtree is extremely impressive in that regard. That doesn't make this DLC a masterpiece, of course, but it definitely plays a part in what makes this DLC a masterpiece, along with a lot of what it does right. So now that we know that the world is beautiful, exploring the world is just that much better. There's a lot of new loot that you can find. There's extremely cool new somber weapons and Ash of Wars that you can collect, and some really awesome looking armor that you can collect. A lot of it is actually really good. I know this because I was trying a lot of it out, because in my first playthrough I was finding so many different new weapons that I would change builds like every couple of days because I found the new coolest weapon, and it happened over and over again, which I really appreciate because that means that the weapons were really good. Not all weapons are equal, some are better than others and some are just kinda bad, but for the most part all of them are really cool. So you have a beautiful and outstanding world where you're constantly getting new upgrades for your character, but it's just kinda better in almost every way. Of course Elden Ring is a lot bigger and there's a lot more room there, but in Shadow of the Erdtree, a lot of what you're getting is going to be useful, where in Elden Ring, a lot of what you get isn't going to be useful. And I can't really express enough how much I love that. I wish there was some more arcane weapons, but that's a specific complaint. Overall, the weapons that it adds are really cool. The new incantations are also really cool, although there should be more arcane incantations. I'll try and stop talking about that. It also added a lot of new sorceries, which were cool. They weren't crazy unique, but they're basically on the same level as the base game. So now that we know all of this, what about Shadow of the Erdtree's level design? Is it good? Is it not good? Well, I like the level design more than Elden Ring. Sure, there are some hiccups here and there, like the Abyssal Woods, but a lot of the level design is just amazing. I mean, the way everything strings together is almost way more satisfying than the base game. And although the level design is about the same difficulty as the base game, it's a lot more simple and straightforward this time around while also remaining as satisfying as the base game's level design. And of course, I think that's awesome because it has a lot less frustrating parts of it, making it a lot more fun. In fact, the bad or negative reviews I've seen of this game, or a lot of them at least, are still admitting that the level design and the beauty of the world is still on top, because, I mean, it is. And I think it's even better and has a lot of what I wanted from the base game, with how satisfying everything that connects together is, or with how much more simple and less frustrating some things that should be more simple and less frustrating are. And the exploration plays a big part in this. In Elden Ring, everything was a lot more flat, but in Shadow of the Erdtree, a lot of things are elevated and lower or higher than other things. So a lot of the time you'll see something that you can't get to, but you still want to get to, which is something that the base game didn't do as much, which I really appreciate. And so this idea not only plays into the level design itself, but it also plays into how beautiful the game is. It's something that I wish the base game of Elden Ring would have played around with more, and that's why it makes me really happy that Shadow of the Erdtree does this. And then another thing that Shadow of the Erdtree completely does better than Elden Ring is the catacombs and caves that you'll find, because now they are way more unique. The boss rooms at the end of them are usually way different instead of just being the same room over and over again like the base game. And the environments are a lot more interesting and diverse. And to be honest, I don't think anyone can deny this. It's just genuinely better. Now this is all great, but the one thing that makes a Souls game is the bosses. And I have to tell you, even with all the controversy, I think that these bosses are some of the greatest bosses ever made. And I don't think it's actually that close. Now I haven't played some other Souls games, so I could be wrong, and I could change my opinion, but for now, these bosses are amazing. Bale is an absolute spectacle of a boss fight. In fact, in this footage, you can even see me freeze when he goes into his second phase because of how mind blown I am. The Divine Beast Dancing Lion is something I did not expect to fight immediately because we've already seen him in a trailer, but his music is amazing and he is extremely difficult, but for being one of the first bosses, if not the first boss for most people, he is really impressive. And then of course there's Rolana, which completely made everyone really mad because she is extremely tanky, but she's awesome and I'm pretty sure you know why. And then you have Mesmer, and Mesmer is probably the greatest design boss I think I have ever fought in my entire life. I don't know if I can say anything negative about this boss fight. I'm being serious, there is nothing that this boss could have done better. He was so much of a joy to fight that when I finally beat him, I was kind of sad that I couldn't keep fighting him. Because although I had that sense of satisfaction of finally beating the boss, he was so fun that I was looking forward to fighting him again in a different playthrough or in New Game Plus. He's just so fun to master. Like he has this one move where he slides his spear on the ground, which is acting as a delay, and then stabs you. And that was really getting me a lot of the time, so I had to learn that move specifically, and I did. And it felt so much better than learning the other delayed moves in Elden Ring's base game. And I can apply that to all of his moves, because I know a lot of his moves by heart, because I've fought him so many times, and I just love his moves. And I think they're really fun to dodge and get over. And this is an idea that Elden Ring didn't really play around with so much. Like I never really mastered Margit. I don't remember too many moves from Godric. I only remember like a couple moves from Renala. And this goes on with a lot of the bosses in Elden Ring. Basically the point I'm trying to make is that in this DLC, I think a lot of the bosses' movesets were more well designed. And so their attacks were really fun to learn. And then the last boss I'd like to talk about is obvious, it's Redon. This is most definitely the most controversial boss in the entire DLC, and I understand why, but I really do like this boss. Now starting off with the first phase, because the second phase is just a bunch of stuff, the first phase is really good. His moveset is great and he's really fun to learn, and overall it just feels like a really fair fight. The only problem with this first phase that they may have patched that carries over to the second phase, but we won't talk about that now, is that he has a sequence of moves where he swings one sword, and then he swings the other sword, and then he swings both of them at the same time, kind of like an X swing. And the problem with this is that it's really hard to dodge all of these swings because they're happening so fast that there's no actual good way to dodge them. Unless you're a light roll, that is. But every other move he has in his first phase is fine. And then you go to his second phase. His second phase is, in my opinion, good. I like his second phase. It took me about 5 days to beat it. So when people say it's difficult, just know that it is very difficult if you haven't fought this boss. He just has a huge amount of AoE attacks and he's exploding everything and it's just really difficult. But this kind of forces you to really learn this fight. The new moves introduced in his second phase I don't have a problem with, although his one move where he explodes everything as soon as he starts his second phase is kind of annoying. Like if you're not already running, then you're gonna be hit by it and you just have to tank it, which I don't really like. Also, he can turn into an anime character. I never learned how to dodge this. I don't know what, I don't even know what to say about this. I never learned how to dodge it and I still don't know how to dodge it. Again, it would probably be easier if I was a light roll. Overall, I like his second phase. I think he could be tweaked down just a little bit, but only in the unfair ways, not in the fair ways, so. The only big problem I have with his second phase is actually just Miquella's hair getting in the way of Redon, so it's hard to see Redon. Luckily, this isn't a problem too much of the time, but when it is a problem, it is really annoying. But overall, I like Redon, and again, his moveset is really fun to learn. So now that I'm done talking about him, I want to talk about the side bosses in Shadow of the Erdtree, because I think they are undeniably way better than the side bosses in Elden Ring. At least the ones I've fought, because I haven't fought every single side boss, but most of them are really good. Of course, you have your average copy and pasted dragon that you see once in a while, but a lot of the bosses that you fight at the end of caves or catacombs or mini dungeons are really good, actually. It seems like they put a lot of work into them, and FromSoft was probably able to do this because it was a smaller world, so they had more time to work on things that they didn't work on as much in Elden Ring. Like, for example, this is me fighting the Death Knight, and he has his own grab animation, which is usually only unique to main bosses in Elden Ring. And overall, his entire fight is just really well done and unique the entire time. And then here's a side boss where its arena is literally leading to a completely different region of the map. So a random cave with a random boss leads to this giant region of the map that you could have totally missed. I just think it's really cool that FromSoft does stuff like that. In conclusion, I really like Shadow of the Erdtree. I think although it's not perfect, it really does a lot of stuff right that a lot of people are just kind of overlooking. Some people are even saying that other Souls games DLCs are better, so that makes me excited to try out some other DLCs. But for now, this DLC is my favorite of all time. Oh, and before I end the video, I just want to say I have a Discord server, so if you want to join, we have a lot of fun there. I'd recommend it, but you don't have to, of course. And yeah, that's about it.